Hey folks, Oisin here. Just before we get into this episode, I want to recommend a podcast called The Bloody Murder Podcast. It's an Australian true crime podcast where Tara and Barney blend humour with factual accounts of some of the lesser known crimes out there. Here's a short clip describing the show.
Is listening to true crime podcasts all the time getting you down, but you just can't stop?
Try listening to Bloody Murder.
We're an Australian comedy true crime podcast focusing on some of the lesser known murder cases from Australia and around the globe.
We use black comedy as a means to tell horrifying true crime stories.
But our humour is respectful and never at the expense of victims or their loved ones.
We get straight into the case with no banter or chit-chat beforehand.
That's because the podcast is about true crime, not our most recent manicure.
But this frosted French salmon is such a great colour on me.
Is it?
Our fresh, well-researched episodes are released every Monday.
Bloody Murder has been nominated for 4 Australian Podcast Awards.
We've been going for over 3 years now.
So we have loads of episodes for you to binge.
You can listen to Bloody Murder on Spotify and any of your favourite podcatchers.
If anyone would like to donate the price of a coffee or pint, you can do so at patreon.com/The Troubles Podcast. Now, back to the episode. The South Armagh Sniping Campaign was a 7-year campaign that was a huge upset to the British Army. Soldiers were sniped from distances of up to 1 kilometre away, and they never knew where or when the next bullet would fly. There was a palpable fear and tension amongst soldiers patrolling in South Armagh. Until a ceasefire would give the British Army time to gather intelligence as they narrowed in on finding the snipers. This is The Troubles Podcast, a podcast which explores the violence and bloodshed that occurred in Northern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, and Great Britain, as multiple sides and organisations waged a conflict over the status of Northern Ireland. Armagh is one of 6 counties that makes up Northern Ireland. The name Armagh is an anglicised composite of the Irish Ard, meaning height, and Macha, the mythical pre-Christian goddess who ruled ancient Ulster. According to lore, Macha builds what is modernly referred to as Navan Fort to serve as the capital for the kings. As Christianity spread throughout Ireland, Armagh assumed an important role in its early development. St. Patrick built his first church there in 457 AD. Armagh, or the Orchard County, so named for its many apple orchards, is also home to the largest freshwater lake in the whole of UK and Ireland, Lough Neagh, which provides 40% of Northern Ireland's drinking water and fills 392 square kilometres to the north of the county. South Armagh is the most southerly point of the county. It straddles Louth to the southeast and Monaghan to the west, along the fringes between the UK and Ireland. Geographically, South Armagh is a rural scattershot of townlands and villages, out from which spread vast tracts of farmland and countryside. The border between the UK and Ireland zigs and zags, this way and that, through shallow streams, along country roads and up over stone walls. There are no walls or literal borders separating Northern Ireland from the Republic of Ireland. But hidden behind the picture postcard scenery lies centuries of fierce opposition to British rule. Generations of Irish Republicans call this place home. Men from all throughout the region fought in the Irish War of Independence, and on the Republican side in the Irish Civil War in the 1920s. Many people from this region also took part in the IRA campaigns in the 40s and 50s. The south of the county is predominantly Catholic, and, apart from Derry, Armagh has one of the highest percentage of Catholics in Northern Ireland. Of course, everything, not least the Troubles, is about perspective. Merlin Rees, Labour's first Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, isn't enamoured by centuries of Republican tradition or of glorious resistance. Nor was he best pleased that by the time he took office in 1974, a sizable patch of the UK is de facto ungovernable. British in name, anything but in reality. A 1976 BBC Panorama report titled Bandit Country took us deep into the bowels of the fortified barracks and out on patrol with the British Army, at a time when South Armagh was the most dangerous outpost for a stationed soldier anywhere in the Empire. It's too dangerous for the army to move in vehicles along the border roads of this county, says reporter Michael Kincella. Wherever possible, the army goes by air. Colonel Philip Davies, commander of the Royal Scots Battalion, then chimes in. It's extremely difficult to provide adequate protection to anybody of any persuasion living in these isolated areas, he tells Charlton. Here there is a hostile population sympathetic to the IRA and a UK police force unable to carry out day-to-day duties on pain of death. The documentary then shows the cramped barracks, home to a battalion of Royal Scots. They are just back from a 16-hour day, manning checkpoints and conducting searches. By the end of the first week, you're feeling tired. And by the end of the second week, you're feeling tireder than the last week. And it just goes on from there, said one weary soldier. In short, South Armagh is a major logistical headache for Britain. A headache that will still exist over 20 years later. The IRA were lethal in Armagh because of the way in which they could launch attacks and then evade capture. They could plant a car bomb or execute a soldier and then be across the border into the Republic of Ireland in a very short amount of time. British soldiers were also not allowed to enter the Republic of Ireland and give chase. They could notify the Irish police, the Gardaí, but there was little trust between the British Army and the Gardaí. In fact, there were a number of cases involving British soldiers entering the Republic of Ireland illegally and causing an international incident between the two countries. One such example was the Forkhill incident, which occurred on the 5th of May in 1976. Days earlier, Irishman Seamus Ludlow had been kidnapped and murdered, presumably by loyalist paramilitaries. This incident happened inside the Republic of Ireland, near the border to Northern Ireland. As a result of this, the Irish Republic beefed up security at the border to prevent any future attacks. On the 5th of May, Gardaí stopped a car in the area of Cornamuckla in the county of Louth, which was just inside the Irish border. Inside the car were two men who refused to identify themselves. Gardaí then became suspicious after one man appeared to be hiding a gun. The Irish army then arrived on the scene and ordered the men out of the car. It was then revealed that these two men were members of the SAS, an elite special forces unit of the British Army. The men were arrested and brought to the nearest Garda station. There, they claimed that they were test driving a car and had accidentally strayed over the border. But this was not the case. It transpired that they were there to relieve two other SAS soldiers who were carrying out observation on Flagstaff Hill, which was inside the Republic of Ireland. Fearing that they'd been ambushed by the IRA, the British Army then sent 4 more SAS soldiers to look for the missing men. These 4 picked up the 2 who were meant to be replaced, and then all 6 were picked up by the Gardaí. As they were being arrested, they pleaded with the Gardaí, saying, "Let us go back. If the roles were reversed, we would let you go back. We are all doing the one bloody job." The Gardaí now had 8 British soldiers in custody in the Republic of Ireland, and Irish Taoiseach Liam Cosgrave was put in an awkward position. If he was to release them without charge, then that would give the green light for more British incursions into Ireland. But if he prosecuted them, then this could have a negative effect on British and Irish diplomatic relations. A confidential memo later revealed that the Northern Irish government urged the Republic of Ireland to release the men, as 8 British soldiers would not fare well in an Irish prison. The men were brought down to Dublin, where they were charged with possession of firearms with intent to endanger life, and for carrying weapons without a certificate. The British Embassy then posted their bail, and a helicopter airlifted the men out of the Republic of Ireland. The British Army Minister apologised to the Republic of Ireland, and the men eventually stood trial, where they were fined £100 and let go. As we move into the 1980s, very little changes. At this stage, Libya's Colonel Gaddafi was supplying the IRA with most of their arms. The US source, which was once plentiful, had largely dried up after the 1981 FBI arrest of Republican gunrunner George Harrison, and the Irish Navy's interception of Marita Ann, a Boston trawler turned floating weapons cache, apprehended on the shores of Kerry in 1984. Inside were 7 tons of munitions. Disruptions aside, the IRA was still able to obtain both an M82 and M90 Barrett 50 caliber sniper rifle from America, at least one of which was smuggled into Ireland by Dundalk-based provisional Martin Quigley shortly before his arrest in 1989. These powerful, long-range rifles differ in technical specifications. However, both share devastating long-range shooting capabilities, effective at distances of up to 1 kilometre. The acquisition provided the IRA with a new method of attack and presented the British with an additional problem when there was already so much to contend with. Sniper attacks weren't a new thing in the Republican playbook. Sean MacStiffon, former Chief of Staff of the Provisional IRA between 1969 and 1972, talked up the efficiency of one-shot, one-kill operations in his book, Memoirs of a Revolutionary. Toby Harnden, author and former Daily Telegraph writer, borrowed Rees's unflattering term, bandit country, for the title of his comprehensive 1999 biography of the IRA in South Armagh. One unnamed member of a sniper team interviewed by Herndon puts it like this: "What's special about the Barnet is the huge kinetic energy. The bullet can just walk through a flak jacket. South Armagh was the prime place to use such a weapon because of the availability of Brits. They came to dread it, and that was part of its effectiveness." Herndon himself calls South Armagh the perfect theatre for war, a petri dish full of broad community support, an abundance of security personnel, and the IRA's intimate knowledge of favourable terrain in close proximity to the Irish border. In truth, the urban battlescapes of Derry and Belfast were never in the running for a sustained sniping campaign. The snipers would have nowhere to escape to. And so, in 1990, 2 IRA sniper teams, now armed with 2 US-made 50 caliber rifles, began a murder campaign in the region that would last 7 years. The IRA debuted the Barrett M82 on the 16th of March 1990. A British soldier suffered only minor head injuries when a bullet pierced his helmet on the Castleblaney Road in Cady. Over 2 years pass with no further attacks recorded by either of the sniper teams. That changed on the 28th of August 1992, when British soldier Paul Turner became the first victim to die at the hands of one-shot Paddy, the colloquial term given to the sniper. Private Turner was taking up position in the main square of Crossmaglen when he was struck in the chest by a single bullet, fired by an IRA sniper some 250 yards away. Turner's death represents the only sniping fatality that year, but many soldiers died by other means. Crossmaglen is one of the largest villages in South Armagh and was a Republican stronghold. During the Troubles, as many as 58 police officers and 124 soldiers were killed by the IRA in South Armagh, and many of those deaths were in this village. One soldier described patrolling the small town of Crossmaglen and how he had to remain vigilant at all times. If he was walking by an abandoned building, he would run, in case there was a remote detonated bomb hiding inside, and a member of the IRA watching with their finger on the trigger. He said he would also pass by such buildings with local civilians, as the IRA were reluctant to injure civilians. 1993 proved to be the worst year of the entire campaign, a year in which 7 members of the security forces lost their lives. On the 25th of February 1993, RUC officer Jonathan Reid became the first to die that year, shot dead while on joint British Army and RUC foot patrol, again in Crossmaglen. He was taking cover at the side of the road and was struck in the chest from a single shot as he stood up. Lance Corporal Lawrence Dickinson was on patrol in Forkhill on St. Patrick's Day in 1993. His men gave chase to a man acting suspiciously when a single high-velocity shot rang out from a nearby vehicle. The bullet hit the soldier in the side and he died a short time later. Soon after this, the IRA, or its supporters, erected mock highway code signs on telephone poles in Crossmaglen and other locations throughout South Armagh. The red triangles framed an armed sniper in silhouette and bore the legend, "Sniper at Work." The signs, which popped up as far south as Newry, sapped morale and kept the security forces in a constant state of unease. Sean Raymond, in a 2002 article for The Telegraph, recorded a similar taunt. Quote, "As the helicopter banks over the heavily fortified army base at Crossmaglen, in the heart of South Armagh's bandit country, incoming troops are welcomed by a 60-foot-long greeting picked out in white on a bricked wall. Don't worry, be happy, it reads. Welcome to Crossmaglen." Visible from hundreds of feet in the air, the message accurately reflected the gallows humour that had become almost standard equipment for the British soldiers stationed there. For Crossmaglen, or XMG as it was known by the troops, it is one of the most dangerous postings they will ever face. Private John Randall would have been well aware of this ever-present danger. He was patrolling in a field near Newtown, Hamilton in June 1993 when he was shot dead from a single high-velocity round, hit in the stomach from the back of a stationary vehicle. He was the fourth victim. Then, 1 month later, on the 17th of July, Lance Corporal Kevin Pullen became the fifth victim. He was shot dead on Carron Road in Crossmaglen, also while out on foot patrol. In winter that year, RUC officer Brian Woods died 2 days after being shot by an IRA sniper on the 2nd of November. He was manning a vehicle checkpoint, or VCP, on Upper Edward Street in the border town of Newry, when he was struck in the neck from a single shot. Lance bombardier Paul Garrett became the sixth victim, exactly 1 month later. He was hit in the stomach from a single bullet while on foot patrol in Cady. The sniper was stationed on a nearby hill. Guardsman Daniel Blinko was the seventh and final victim of 1993. He died while out on foot patrol in Crossmaglen, the deadliest site of the 7-year campaign. And then, a break. Quote, "Recognising the potential of the current situation, and in order to enhance the democratic process and underlying our definitive commitment to its success, the leadership of the IRA have declared that as of midnight, August 31, there will be a complete cessation of military operations. All our units have been instructed accordingly." So began the IRA's 300-word statement, relayed to the RTE through an intermediary at the tail end of summer in 1994. The IRA ceasefire offered a welcome, if unlikely, reprieve. For the time being at least, the security forces could now patrol South Armagh with a tentative caution, free from the snipers' sights. Some sniper at work signs reflected this new truce and were updated to read, "On hold." After the Good Friday Agreement was signed, these signs were then edited again to say things like job seeking and so on. The IRA's so-called cessation of military operations gave relief to beleaguered soldiers and police not only in South Armagh, but Northern Ireland as a whole. By this point, the province bore the scars of a 25-year conflict, a period of incalculable loss in every manner. There were jubilant scenes in West Belfast upon hearing the news. The then Sinn Féin president, Gerry Adams, lauded the IRA leadership in a rousing speech, delivered to a packed crowd outside Connolly House headquarters. He spoke of courage and of being bold, of decisive action leading to this historic moment. There was a sense that real change was afoot. But this was not the case in South Armagh. No cavalcades, no carnivals, no speeches to packed crowds in Crossmaglen Square. There was only muted acceptance and private resentment. The IRA's South Armagh Brigade were insular and secretive, and at the hardest of the hard line. They had their suspicions from the outset, and in hindsight they had every reason to be. Because, just as the IRA was stepping down, the security forces were stepping up. The British intelligence machine went into overdrive, and began collecting information on known South Armagh provisionals, surveilling their homes and tracking their movements. With enemy guns now silent, the British were free to try and locate the snipers. During the investigation, British intelligence flagged a farm outside Crossmaglen, which prompted further investigation. The army planted cameras around the complex and then fit a tracking device to a Mazda 626 which was parked inside. The Mazda, on closer inspection, was actually a heavily modified mobile sniper platform. It contained a sliding armoured plate in the boot, fitted to accommodate a prone sniper as he operated the gun. The boot also contained a quick-release pulley system, snapping shut in a flash when it was time to get away. Hidden cameras also revealed the identities of the main players. The net was closing in. On February 9th, 1996, John Murray was sitting at his desk in the RTE offices in Dublin. The phone rang at 5:30 p.m. and a man with a northern accent told him that the IRA ceasefire will end from 6 o'clock that evening. Initially there was a sense of disbelief, said John, in the 2016 BBC documentary Executing Peace. RTE was uncertain of the statement and did not report the announcement on its 6 p.m. news bulletin. Shortly afterwards, the IRA sent a string of telephoned bomb warnings. They contained code words which were only known to the IRA and the police. In one message to the Irish News, the caller mentioned, quote, "There's a massive bomb beside South Quay Station, Marshwall, Isle of Dogs, London. Evacuate immediately." Police rushed to evacuate the area. At 7:01 p.m, a lorry that was left idling in the Docklands area exploded. The blast killed 2 people outright and injured 100 more, and caused an estimated £150 million in damage. Upon inspection of the wreckage, the lorry was found to be heavily modified, with the bomb itself being welded into the framework instead of just merely concealed inside. This was a complex step that was taken by the IRA to ensure that the lorry would pass through any cursory inspection en route to London. This craftsmanship and attention to detail bore all the hallmarks of the South Armagh Brigade. Executing Peace recreated the event, taking the viewer from production to blast, to the eventual outcome which would see the bombing and sniper operations meet, and how both contained the same key players from the same key area. In the early aftermath of the Docklands bombing, and with the spotlight trained on South Armagh, the security forces launched Operation Fisherton. More than 1,000 police and army personnel combed the countryside looking for clues. A piece of steel, a chip of paint, anything tangible that could link the provisional IRA back to the Docklands bombing. Coincidentally, investigators were also able to retrace the bombers' taken route, thanks to CCTV and eyewitness reports. They collected thumbprints from a magazine left by one of the bombers in a tyre on wasteland, on an ashtray at a truck stop in Carlisle, and on the ferry ticket used to transport the bomb. But though they had these fingerprints, they couldn't find a match. Alan Mains was the RUC's senior investigating officer on the Docklands case. Speaking about the potential capture of the IRA men in South Armagh, Mains said, "That operation, in terms of personnel, planning, finance, was probably the largest I've ever witnessed. If successful, it had the opportunity of literally taking out a team in South Armagh. Despite the wealth of resources and manpower, the operation proved unsuccessful. To make matters worse, the IRA followed up the Docklands bombing with a similar attack in Manchester." Undeterred, the police changed tactics. Instead of looking for needles in haystacks, they focused all their attention on surveillance, which had already yielded vital information. Scotland Yard joined in, and there was a concerted effort to get solid evidence, as Alan Mains puts it. On the Republican side, there was jubilation of sorts. The police had come up short and the ceasefire was over, and the snipers could get back to work. The highway code signs, with the sniper silhouettes, were updated once more, saying things like, "We're back, you know." And on the 12th of February 1997, the IRA made good on this claim. Lance Bombardier Stephen Restorick was manning an army checkpoint on the Green Road in the village of Bessbrook when he stopped Lorraine McElroy and her husband close to their home. He was then shot once in the back and became the 9th and final victim of the campaign. In fact, he was the last soldier to die by hostile fire during the Troubles, as the peace process was only months away from coming to pass. Former police ombudsman Nuala O'Lone later concluded that Restorick's death was unavoidable, citing a lack of resources as opposed to surveillance issues. Whatever the reasons, the incident caused public outrage. Gerry Adams, the leader of Sinn Féin at the time, called it tragic, and later wrote a letter of condolences to the soldier's mother. Lorraine McElroy, the driver of the stopped car, was injured in the shooting that changed her life. "The image of him smiling at me will stay with me to the day I die," she said. She attended Stephen's funeral in England at the request of Rita Restorick, Stephen's mother. "People ask me if I'm nervous, as a Catholic, of going to a British soldier's funeral," she said. "But I'm not going to a British soldier's funeral. I'm going to the funeral of a young man who died in front of me." On the 29th of March 1997, the IRA struck again. In a near miss, an RUC officer is badly injured after being shot at Forkhill security base. It was the last action of any IRA snipers. Between 1990 and 1997, 24 shots from sniper rifles rang out, claiming the lives of 7 British soldiers and 2 RUC members. On the 9th of April 1997, the IRA prepared to kill again. Alan Mains explained, quote, "They would have gone to a vantage point, waited for an opportunity, and if the opportunity had presented itself, then they would have shot a soldier dead. But the opportunity didn't present itself." He then went on to explain what happened to the car and trailer which the RUC had been following. Quote, "On the way back, the wheel literally came off their vehicle. You could see them quite clearly that the axle had gone into this farm, you could see the mark, you could see the arc. Police photographs show the line chewed into the road, which disappeared behind a gate and into a farm. It transpired the police had been monitoring the vehicle all along, and they had loosened the nuts on the sheep trailer at an earlier stage to stop the sniper team heading across the border and into objective safety. The now immobile trailer lay lopsided in the barn overnight. When the sniper team returned the next day to inspect the damage, there were 16 members of an elite SAS unit waiting for them. After a brief struggle, 4 members of one sniper team were taken into police custody. The second team was never apprehended. The British Army had to be very careful during this operation, because if they ended up killing all of the IRA men, this could have dealt a massive blow to the peace process, which was just months away from completion. Of the 4 people apprehended, one of them is Michael Kincella. He's 32 and from Cullyhalla. His brother Fergal was a Sinn Féin member and IRA volunteer and was shot dead by Royal Marines at a checkpoint 7 years previous. Michael was also wounded in the attack and lost a lung as a result. He was later sentenced to a total of 105 years for his role in the sniper attacks. The next person arrested was James McArdle. He was 32 as well and from Crossmaglen, and this proved to be a double scoop. His fingerprints matched those obtained along the retraced route to London, which implicated him in the Docklands bombing. He was later flown to London and sentenced to 25 years for his role in the attack. Alan Mains, the officer we mentioned earlier who was in charge of the investigation, likened McArdle's capture to winning the lottery in the policing world. The third person arrested was Martin Mines, who was 31 and from Silverbridge. He was sentenced to 50 years for conspiracy to murder and arms possession. He laughed as he left the court and waved to his supporters in the public gallery, shouting, "See you in 18 months," in reference to the early release scheme that was part of the Good Friday Agreement. The fourth and final member was Bernard McGinn. He was 42 and from Castleblaney in Monaghan. He was an outsider and cracked under questioning and divulged valuable information to the police concerning IRA operations, its members and ways to thwart further attacks. McGinn also betrayed Frank McCabe, the IRA commander behind the sniper campaign, though he later recanted this statement. McGinn was found guilty of the murder of Lance Bombardier Restoric and was sentenced to a total of 435 years, including 3 life terms for that murder and a variety of other attacks. The security forces recovered one of the sniper rifles, along with an AK-47, which was found in a false bottom underneath the sheep trailer. The Good Friday Agreement was signed on the 10th of April 1998. It was a historical moment that brought an end to the Troubles, a conflict which raged for almost 40 years and caused untold damage. The signing was also exactly 1 year on from the SAS operations in Crossmaglen, where some of the snipers were caught. The Good Friday Agreement was the starting point from which societal repair could begin in earnest. Progress was slow, uncertainties still exist, and trust builds over time. There was a major breakthrough in 2005 when the IRA finally decommissioned the last of its weapons, a move which they started in 2001. As part of that deal, Britain agreed to dismantle its barracks and raise the watchtowers which peppered the landscape. The 1997 capture and arrest of Kincella, McArdle, Mines and McGinn was one of the most important moments of the Troubles. It stood on the precipice of peace, just shy of the historic accord granting everyone in Ireland a new beginning. All 4 men of the IRA sniper team served only a fraction of their sentences, freed under the early release scheme built into the Good Friday Agreement. The scheme was not welcomed by all, but it was part of the bargain. Overall, the strategy was seen as a success. The IRA struck fear in the hearts of British soldiers, and a large amount of British time, energy and money had to be diverted so that they could tackle the snipers head on. With the British Army gone, South Armagh returned to a place of rural splendour unblemished by conflict. It is free of bombs and gun battles, of checkpoints and cages, and free of sniper rifles too. This episode was edited by me and written by Michael Kincella. Michael Thomas Kincella was born in Lisburn, schooled in Belfast, and whisked to the outskirts of Newry, where his family has lived for over 20 years. He moved to Glasgow in 2017, where he now works as a freelance writer. His hobbies include reading, taking long walks on the beach, and writing short bios in the third person. See you next time.